You was kind, you was smart, you was important. That line is from the 2009 novel called The Help by Catherine Stockett, which I just finished reading into the wee hours of last night around 2 a.m. Really exciting, so I thought I would do a book review for you guys and kind of my take on it. Also, there is a movie based on the book that came out in 2011, a fantastic movie. I actually prefer the movie to the book, and I'll kind of explain that later. It stars Emma Stone, Octavia Spencer, Viola Davis, and Bryce Dallas Howard. I have watched it a dozen times. It is so good. So I will give you a brief synopsis on the book in case you don't know what it's about. So it takes place in 1962, the early 1960s, in Jackson, Mississippi, during the segregation period between blacks and whites, during the whole civil rights movement. And it is told from the perspective of three different women, two of them whom are two black housemaids named Abilene Clark and Minnie Jackson. They are two black housemaids to two white women and their families. The third perspective is from a young white woman named Skeeter. She is a recent college graduate who decides to move back to Jackson, Mississippi, her hometown, to kind of reconnect with her friends and family and find a job. So essentially, what happens is that Skeeter kind of reconnects with her friends, and she is very distressed and very taken back by how her friends are treating the help and their opinions on the whole segregation. Saying, blacks carry different diseases than whites, how black people have to use separate washrooms. Again, this is the segregation period in the 1960s. And essentially downright racism from her friends, and it doesn't set well with Skeeter, and she is very frustrated with it. And she wants to make a difference. She wants to change it. She doesn't like what is happening in Jackson all across the United States. So she decides she wants to write a book from the perspective of the help themselves. So she gathers Abilene Clark and Minnie Jackson, the two main black housemaids in the novel, and she decides to interview them and gather their testimonies in what it's like to be housemaids to white women, the abuse they have to go through, the happy moments, if there are any, the trials and tribulations, what it's like to raise young babies and children up until those babies and children become adults themselves. And then eventually Skeeter gathers other housemaids, their interviews and their trials and tribulations. And then Skeeter finally has 12 interviews or so. And then she's able to write a book. She sends it off to New York to get published. And then the ending of the book is essentially the aftermath of what happens after the book is published. Skeeter never uses the real names of all the maids she interviews. Again, what Skeeter is doing is against the law. And it's very dangerous. Segregation, racism between blacks and whites is very prominent. It's very serious in Jackson, Mississippi. And if she is ever found out, if the maids are ever found out as to what they're doing, media in secret to do these interviews, conduct these interviews for this book, they could be thrown in jail, they could be charged, or even worse. So it's a very risky thing they are doing. The aftermath of the book being published, these women soon realize that the book is about Jackson, Mississippi, and it is about them. So that's kind of what occurs in the novel. A little bit of a history lesson as well for someone like myself who's very uneducated when it comes to the whole civil rights movement and the segregation. I learned a lot from reading this novel as well as Gone with the Wind. I won't say these books are textbooks by any means, but they are a little bit of a history lesson. When I went to school, I didn't learn about segregation. I didn't learn about the Civil War, which is disgusting thinking about it now. It's such a prominent time in our history, and just not learning about that, especially someone like myself who is white. It's very important for me to know about those things, and it's a little frustrating that I didn't learn about those things until recently from reading Gone with the Wind and The Help, and now I'm very interested about it. I want to continue reading books in regards to segregation, the Civil War, civil rights not just pertaining to African Americans, but to any other ethnicity who has faced discrimination of any kind. So I will get into the book right now for you guys. So Skeeter. I really did like Skeeter. She is a very important character in the novel. And I will say that this book was written by a white woman, Catherine Stockett. She did have a housemaid growing up, so I imagine she has lots of stories to tell. I do trust her perspective and opinion. She must be quite knowledgeable on the subject to have written this book, and she did it quite well. I will also say that I do prefer the movie over the book. And I'm not just saying that because I read the book second to the movie. It's not because I've watched the movie dozens of times. I actually do prefer the movie to the book. Something like Gone with the Wind. Gone with the Wind, again, I watched the movie a couple times first before reading the book. I read the book second, and it turned out I loved the book a lot more than the movie. The characters of Skeeter, Aibileen, and Minnie were played fantastically by the actresses who portrayed them in the movie: Emma Stone, Viola Davis, and Octavia Spencer. Octavia Spencer has actually won an Oscar, I believe, for her role as Minnie Jackson. Much deserved. I could definitely, as I was reading the book, I could definitely hear Emma and Octavia's and Viola's performances and hear their voices as I was reading their characters in the novel. Also, I really enjoyed Hilly's performance in the movie. In the book, she is more portrayed as just a downright negative, mean-spirited, horrible woman. In the ending of the book, I didn't like the ending of the book. Actually, I preferred the ending in the movie instead. The endings are exactly the same, but I just felt more of a connection and more of an emotional sense to the ending in the movie than I did the book. I just feel like there were a lot of scenes in the book that were portrayed better in the movie. Another scene in particular, the moment where Skeeter is told by her mother what actually happened to Constantine, was done so much better in the movie than the book. So much more emotional and powerful. So though I really did enjoy the novel, I just feel like a lot of the scenes were done a lot better in the movie than the book. Even the benefit part of the movie was done a lot better in the movie than the book. What I felt like the movie didn't do as strong as the book was the connection to the civil rights movement and the actual segregation. When it came to the movie, a lot of it was smoke and mirrors. You're kind of distracted by the beautiful set pieces, the costumes, the acting, the cinematography, the locations. You're kind of distracted by that, so you're just kind of amazed, and it's so beautiful, and the music draws you in, and the civil rights and the segregation's kind of put in the background. Whereas in the book, you don't have any of those things to distract you. You don't have the beautiful set pieces and the music and the acting to distract you. What you see is what you get. So there's more of a connection to the civil rights and the segregation and the racism in the book. So I felt like it was stronger in that sense than in the movie. And The Help is by no means a textbook. But for someone like myself who was so uneducated when it came to all these issues that occurred earlier in the past century or mid-century, I'm very happy for these books because, again, like, I was never taught these things in school. And history lessons, like, I was never taught about it. So to actually read about Filey as, a 28-year-old, it's taken me this long to kind of realize the issues that were occurring back then. So though I prefer the movie to the book, there's one character in particular who I thought was portrayed better in the book than the movie, that's Celia Foote. In the movie, she's very much portrayed as a very scatterbrained, ditzy woman, which she is portrayed in both the book and movie. But in the book, she is more so portrayed as a strong-willed woman. In particular, that scene with the naked man who appears in her front yard, and Minnie Jackson and Celia Foote are kind of standoffish. They don't know how to react to that, and they feel threatened. So Cecilia finally decides to beat the shit out of this naked man with a skillet to the point of he is almost dead. Minnie kind of has to stop her from beating him up with a skillet. That scene is not portrayed in the movie by any means, which I feel like they should have. I feel like Celia doesn't really have that huge redeeming quality to her. Whereas I feel like if they put that scene into the movie, she would have been more so portrayed as a stronger woman, someone who's able to kind of take care of herself. Celia Foote is also portrayed as an alcoholic in the book. I really feel like they didn't really do Celia Foote justice in the movie at all. They almost got it, but there were just so many things they could have added. I mean, I understand it's a movie, it can only be so long, and they kind of had to give screen time to more prominent characters, but I wish they would have given just a bit more screen time to Celia Foote in the movie, and some more of her accomplishments in the book. I did feel like the book was a bit long. I feel like it could have been a bit shorter. There was one scene in particular I didn't really care for. It was near the middle where Skeeter and her family visits her boyfriend Stuart's and his parents' house. I didn't really care for that scene. It was like a whole chapter. I just felt like it was filler. I will say though that one of my favorite performances in the movie is by Allison Janney, who plays Skeeter's mom. I love her. She played the mom to a T. I absolutely love the performance. Also, another one of my favorite portrayals of one of the characters in the novel is by Sissy Spacek, who played Carrie in the 1971 horror movie. I really loved her performance. Really funny, really witty. Really loved it, especially during the pie scene. Fantastic. Let me get into the pie scene. The pie scene was a brilliant scene in the movie, and it wasn't really portrayed very well in the book, but in the movie, it was fantastic. Hilly's reaction, her reaction to reading it in the book, I absolutely loved it. One of my favorite scenes in the movie. Eat my shit. Have you lost your mind? No, but you about to, 'cause you just did. Did what? You just have one slice, you had two slices! Run, Betty, run! I mean, honestly, there are so many beautiful scenes in the movie. One in particular between Constantine and Skeeter, when Skeeter is on the swing and Constantine kind of comes along. Skeeter's kind of down in the dumps, and I think she was called ugly by a boy in school. And Constantine kind of gives her a pep talk. Really, really beautiful scene. Again, the scene where Skeeter finds out about Constantine, very heartbreaking. The ending to this movie is probably one of the most emotional endings to any movie that I have ever seen. You give my sweet girl a chance. I also read a recent interview with Viola Davis that she actually, to this day, she actually didn't like her performance. Well, not necessarily her performance, but she didn't like how her character was portrayed in the movie. Aibileen Clark, she felt like that her character wasn't really given the voice in the movie that it was in the book, which I guess I can kind of see, but I feel like Abileen's voice was perfectly portrayed in the movie. I think she also said that a lot of the movie was also focused on Skeeter and the white people and not necessarily the black, which I feel like was kind of 50-50. But I can kind of understand where Viola is coming from, how, this book is about the black housemaids and what it's like during the segregation. It's supposed to be like what, black people in general are experiencing during this difficult time. And yet we have, a lot of the parts of the movie which are showcasing these white women. Which is understandable, I guess. At the end of the day, this book is about the trials and tribulations of the housemaids, the help, and the black families that had to kind of go through that. And yet we are given so much depth and perspective from also the white families and the white characters. And a quick side note, the actor who plays Johnny Foot in the movie, oh my god, don't get me started. Let's just say I might have Googled him afterward, more than once. So this is also one of those books where I almost wish there was a sequel. Just to know what happened after kind of the events of the book being published. But also a part of me doesn't want to know. I like to kind of make up my own ending and kind of come up with my own ideas of kind of what happened to these characters after. So that's essentially kind of my review and my impressions of both the movie and the book. The book I did enjoy, but I do prefer the movie to the book. I felt like the book was a bit long. I feel like it could have been a bit shorter. It's a very easy read. Anybody can read it. I kid you not, like a 10-year-old could read it. Or an 80-year-old. I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's very important to read, especially for the youth of today. It's very important to know how far we have come and what we are still facing in this day and age. It's very important, especially, for someone like myself who never really read about any of this. I've never really read about segregation, the Civil War. The first time I really ever read about the Civil War was when I read Gone with the Wind, like a couple months ago, and that's so sad being 28 years old, and it's taken this long to kind of read about it. Again, like, I wasn't taught any of this in school. If I was, it was very brief, because I don't remember any of it. But I highly urge for high schools, junior highs, even elementary schools, to recommend this book for reading. If not the book, then the movie at least. Watch this with your class. If you are a teacher out there who teaches English or history or what have you in college, high school, whatever, show this movie. It is definitely a fantastic movie. It is not boring. It is fantastic, beautifully acted. And you will learn a lot from it, honestly. So if you haven't read this book yet, or you haven't watched the movie, what you're gonna do right now is you're gonna go out, you're gonna buy the movie, you're gonna rent the movie, or you're gonna go out and buy the book, or you're gonna rent the book for your local bookstore, and you're gonna read the book, and you're gonna watch the movie, or you're just gonna watch the movie, or just read the book. One or the other, you're gonna do it right now. It is so important. Highly, highly, highly recommended, and the book and the movie receives my highest recommendation. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say on these two guys right here. Thank you for watching this video. And yeah, I will see you next time, guys. Bye.